good evening, everyone, and welcome to Eldering in Grace. This evening, as we entertain something of the wisdom and the gift of humor and laughter, and learning to live in the zone of the incongruous. It's a joy to have us all together this evening. So let's just take a breath, and then I'll turn our evening over to Danny.
Thank you, dear Kathleen, and welcome to everyone. Clearly a smaller group this evening, but that's what happens inevitably. But we began this conversation, as Kathleen said, with the goal of eldering in grace and hopefully with grace. Clearly, at some stage, we'll want to talk about death and dying as when the entire process of eldering appears to draw to a close. But before we do that, and perhaps as a way of preparing ourselves, I thought it might be helpful to bring a little humor to the exploration. I said in the introduction to this session that you hopefully received in the recent e-blast that humor is essentially holding apparent contradictions and a creative tension, like old age and beauty. The result is a form of maybe release of the tension, perhaps in the form of a laugh, or even as a creative insight or response born of the tension, like the beauty of age as the wisdom of letting go. Jesters throughout history and stand-up comics today hold a mirror up to us to reflect such contradictions, I think, in order to help release the tension, generate the wisdom we need. So our focus here is the tension between integration and despair, which is how Erik Erikson describes this final stage of living and development. So let's begin by bringing a little humor to this theme. Carlos is going to play us a song by a singer-songwriter from New Jersey called John Gorka. It's called People My Age. It's not flattering, but it's kind of honest and with a little hint of a suggestion. So sit back. I'll put the words up on the screen myself and you can see it. Go ahead, Carlos.
Have people my age have started looking gross. I cannot say all, and I shouldn't say most. I've seen them in the grocery, I've seen them up close. People my age have started looking gross. People my age are showing somewhere. There's holes where the teeth was and their heads have gone bare. Their brains are shrinking, faces sinking into fat. And as for the mirror, we won't be looking into that. People my age have started looking gross. Maybe not in Colorado or up the Silicon Coast. Back in Pennsylvania, I'd eat scrapple on toast. Those were my first steps on the road to looking gross. People my age are looking overripe. Some are getting operations to tighten up what ain't tight. what gravity's ruin they try to fix with a knife. What's pleasant in the darkness is plain scary in the light. Oh, gross.
Oh, dear God. A little rough. I went to see John Gorka about 2 weeks ago. He doesn't look like his picture now, let me tell you. He's also our age, and he's showing all the signs that he's been singing about. And by the way, for those of you not familiar, he mentions the word scrapple. Anyone know what that is? Some kind of pork inners that's very unhealthy. I think downright.
It's a Philadelphia specialty. It's a signature dish of Philadelphia. Yeah, it's pig innards. Yeah, yeah.
Well, a little challenging, as I said, but with a hint of a suggestion that perhaps we need to go with the flow. I don't know, all part of humor as I was trying to sort of define it. I want to show you another. Let me see if I can show you this piece, this next piece that I'm going to just work with for a second. This one here by Billy Collins. It's called Forgetfulness. It's also a little close to the bone, but I think offered gently. It says the name of the author is the first to go, followed obediently by the title, the plot, the heartbreaking conclusion, the entire novel, which suddenly becomes one you have never read, never even heard of. Sound familiar? As if one by one, the memories you used to harbor decided to retire to the southern hemisphere of the brain, to a little fishing village where there are no phones. Long ago, you kissed the names of the 9 muses goodbye and watched the quadratic equation packets bag. And even now, as you memorize the order of the planets, something else is slipping away. A state flower, perhaps, the address of an uncle, the capital of Paraguay. Whatever it is you are struggling to remember, it is not poised on the tip of your tongue, or even lurking in some obscure corner of your spleen. It has floated away down a dark mythological river whose name begins with an L, as far as you can recall. Well, on your way to oblivion, where you will join those who have even forgotten how to swim and how to ride a bicycle. No wonder you rise in the middle of the night to look up the date of a famous battle in a book on war. No wonder the moon in the window seems to have drifted out of a love poem that you used to know by heart. Again, we can all identify with these challenges as we get older. So a little bit of humor he brings to it to soften the challenge. He says, it's as if one by one, the memories you used to harbor decided to retire to the southern hemisphere of the brain, to a little fishing village where there are no phones. But it's not our fault, he seems to say. So no self-recrimination, which is often our first port of call. But then he closes the reflection by raising the tension just a little more, perhaps in the hope that it will generate the intended release of a laugh, but even surface also an insight. No wonder you rise in the middle of the night to look up the date of a famous battle in a book on war. No wonder the moon in the window seems to have drifted out of a love poem that you used to know by heart. I'm guessing that all of us, elders of whatever age, resonate with these reflections and get the humor. So let's get into this by accessing our own truer self and sharing with each other what this all stirs up. So I'm going to invite us into a mindfulness meditation. And then Carlos will break us into pairs where we'll talk about what stirs in us already around humor specifically. We'll explore it a little bit more later, but what it stirs in us at the moment. So position yourself comfortably, also relaxed, but also alert. Your back straight, your hands in your lap, your eyes closed or softened, and take 3 deep breaths. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And breathe normally. And where you feel tension in your body, breathe into that place. Breathe out the tension. Do that for a few moments. Notice the thoughts that are now probably running around in your head. But now let them melt, as it were, by simply paying attention to your breath as you breathe in and out deliberately. In your mind, softly say the theme of this evening: humor and perspective. And see if you can call to mind an experience of the aging process in your own life when humor served in the way we're discussing, released tension, created perhaps even an insight. Could be an experience of your own aging or someone close to you. Stay with the feelings and the body memories that this stirs. Breathe in the sensations and the memories. And finally, when you're ready, let's come back. Carlos is going to break us into pairs. Maybe you'd share a story. One just jumps to my own mind immediately, and it's both funny and tender in the way that I think I'm trying to say. My father loved Black Bush whiskey, and so do I. One of the things I carried on the tradition. It's from Bushmills, Northern Ireland. And after my mother died, it was touching to see him. He would put on a song that many of you remember, perhaps. Enjoy yourself, it's later than you think. And he would drink a little Black Bush whiskey and dance around the room. And I have a photograph now because on the night before he died, I kind of sensed his death was coming. My brother and myself and he have a photograph of the 3 of us drinking a glass of Black Bush. And so the memory always stays with me. It's both funny to think of him dancing, and it also is touching and generates something else, maybe an insight. So that's the sort of thing that it comes to me. Carlos, just to invite us into pairs to see what it stirs in you, and we'll bring that back to each other afterwards. Welcome back. First of all, I hope you enjoyed. Most all of us enjoy these little breakout sessions. That's the heart of this process, I think. But for those of you that are not familiar with the process, Kevin, perhaps you may or may not remember, this mindfulness dialogue, which is a combination of mindfulness, obviously, and dialogue, it goes through 3 stages. Our process, our model takes on 3 stages. One is connecting, which is what we're doing now, and we'll share a little bit to deepen that. And then we'll go on to exploring the 2nd stage, and then on to discovering. But I'll keep you abreast of it as we go. So what we'll do now is here, and we've been experimenting with this. I think it works to hear from perhaps four of us. And if you feel moved to speak, think of yourself as representing the group, as speaking from this collective voice which is beginning to emerge. And we'll hear from four of us. See ourselves from in the four directions from the north, first of all. Who would like to speak? What stirred in you? What did you hear? What would you like to share with us about humor and eldering?
Well, I can say that both me and Linda found a lot of humor in being the butt of many jokes of our children. And it feels it feels like we're almost doing them a service, allowing ourselves to be laughed at.
Wow.
And as Linda put it, harvesting memories for them.
Wow. That's interesting. Like all humor, it's both funny and there's a little poignant side to it as well. Thanks, Rob. Yeah. What about another, this time from the south? Whatever. Go ahead, sir.
I can talk from the South. I'm in Virginia and lived in Georgia for a long time. So I feel very at home speaking from the South. And I really related to what Rob said. I mean, my children tease me all the time. And I was in a breakout room with Kevin, and we were sharing some of the things that happen to us when we're looking for our phone and we're standing.
Oh,
Just lost you. Say that again, Sue. You're just going on to mute. There we go.
There, okay. I was saying that what happens to me, and I was in a breakout room with Kevin, and we had several things that we shared together. But for me, it's my children make fun of me all the time because I'm always looking for my glasses, which are usually on my head, and so I run around because I can't see without them now. And then I'm losing the phone. And then the other thing we were talking about is we have to have lists. And even though we have lists when we leave the house and we've got, our wallet, keys, phone, there's something we don't have. Maybe it's the water bottle, or maybe it's the coffee, or maybe it's the list for the day, or something we were going to do for the day. But we never fail to get out of the house in one trip. It always takes a trip back to get whatever we didn't do. It just seems like you spend more time trying to be truly efficient. And I don't believe in the fact that we just lose these brain cells and then that's it, because we know that we can spark new connections and we keep our brain active and all that sort of thing. So I keep thinking, is it focus or is it just kind of overwhelming or what? It makes me so distracted. But I do think humor is a huge help. And I have to just tell you, this Gorka guy, he is all over the ethosphere. I have gotten at least 4 messages with his songs. Now, my brothers are all musical and play the guitar, but everyone is loving this song about what's happened to my friends. And it's so true. So I think it's nice to have some shared, what would you call it? I don't know, but just, we can all laugh at that. And we can laugh at our children making fun of us and laugh at ourselves too. So thank you.
Thank you, Sue. That's so right on. I think most of us would really hear that and resonate with that. So one more, another voice, 2 more voices, one more from wherever, west, east.
well, for me, I had a really good conversation with Mike, and one of the things that has come up for me all along is humor listening to kids, and I get so much boost from listening to my grandkids and just playing with their version of reality, and it keeps me like I told Mike, I'm just a big kid in an old body, and I just join in with in their world, and that refreshes me more than as much as anything.
That's wonderful. We spoke in a previous session about the neatinous species, that we are the neatinous, that we carry on traits of juvenile traits into adulthood, and specifically play, which is what keeps us going, keeps us alive, keeps us learning. I think to lose
And
this.
as I think I shared with you, Danny, these two buddies I had that I used to travel all over the place with, and we were a tight group, and we had the same atmosphere, and we diagnosed ourselves with terminal neoteny that was going to kill us.
Well, a good way to go.
Exactly.
It beats not with a bang, but a whimper. So one more voice.
Well, what Jay didn't say is that he was for years a stand-up comedian. That and and really enjoyed it, and continues to have that kind of alternative perspective on everything in conversations, thinking about, oh, what's not being said here, or how is that funny, and calling attention to it.
That's fascinating. And there seems to be like a plethora of stand-up comics these days. Turn on any of the streaming programs and there they are. It's like a revived art form.
We need it. We need it badly.
We need it badly. I know that in my own Northern Ireland and Belfast, where I grew up, humor got us through. We had to. We would make jokes against ourselves as a way of holding that tension and releasing it, and at the same time shining a light of insight. So.
By the way, Rob has a joke. He didn't have time to. I didn't have time to hear it, but he said he would tell it if I invited him to. So
Well,
I'm inviting Rob to tell his joke.
I could do it now. I could do it another time, Danny, whenever it's the right time.
Go ahead. It's perfect.
All right. Well, you all need to know this joke. So there's a couple that went to a nice restaurant, and they're kind of, he was telling his elderly friend about it, and friend says, "So what's the name of it?" He goes, okay, "What's the name of a red flower?" And he says, "A tulip? No. An azalea. No, not that. Okay, a rose. Yeah, that's it. Hey, Rose, what was the name of that restaurant we went to last night?
Oh, on that note, let me invite any of us too, as we go through this process this evening, if a joke does surface, because it is worth, telling them and seeing what it is, how it works. I'm just intrigued by how humor holds the contradictions, holds the tension, and there's a surprise element to it always. So anyway, it would be worth kind of thinking more about what actually humor is, but let's just say for the moment, we've got a sense of it and how important it is. Let's explore it a little bit through the lens of another friend of ours, Mary Oliver. At the beginning, I suggested that humor is about holding this tension between apparent contradictions. And Mary Oliver describes the tension like this. On one side, there is what she calls, you'll remember if you know Mary Oliver at all, your one wild and precious life, she calls it. So on the one side, there's this, my one wild and precious life. And then on the other side, she states that life knows and does exactly what it wants without permission from us. So in this piece, it's called Morning Poem. Some of you may be familiar with it. I'm going to put it up on the screen, and I'd love to hear someone other than myself read it. Maybe a female voice would be really helpful if one of you ladies would be willing to read. So let me put it up on the screen. All right. There we are. And I'll scroll down with it. In this piece, she adds that life also invites us to participate in its mysterious process, not by trying to control, but by simply being happy. Daring to be happy is how she describes it, you'll see. I'll come back to what she means, but first, let's hear the poem. Anyone ready to read?
Marguerite is volunteering.
I'll go for it, Mary. I couldn't see you, Peggy.
Oh, sure. Shall we?
Go ahead.
Okay. Every morning, the world is created. Under the orange sticks of the sun, the heaped ashes of the night turn into leaves again and fasten themselves to the highest branches, and the ponds appear like black cloth on which are painted islands of summer lilies. If it is your nature to be happy, you will swim away along the soft trails for hours, your imagination alighting everywhere. And if your spirit carries within it the thorn that is heavier than lead, if it's all you can do to keep on trudging, there is still, somewhere deep within you, a beast shouting that the earth is exactly what it wanted. Each pond with its blazing lilies is a prayer heard and answered lavishly every morning. Whether or not you've ever dared to be happy, whether or not you've ever dared to pray. Mary Oliver.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Some of us know this, perhaps, this wonderful little piece. She's saying we can actually join in this awesome process of constant, every morning, birth and birthing. All we have to do is dare. I love that, the use of the word. Dare to be happy, as she puts it. Dare to pray, she adds. And our response doesn't depend on our life circumstances, is what she seems to imply, or our genetic coding, or even our mood. It may be our nature to be happy, she says. On the other hand, sadness, the thorn that is heavier than lead, may be our dominant perspective and experience, so that it's as much as we can do to keep on trudging. And who doesn't know that feeling? It doesn't matter, though, she concludes, for there's still somewhere deep within us a beast shouting that the earth is exactly what it wants. In other words, we know in our heart of hearts that this life we live is so much more than our insistent illusions of separateness or control and the anxieties and contrivances this produces in us. Now, there's a fascinating perspective, that the earth knows what it's doing and knows what it wants. Life, in other words, is inexorable, unstoppable, living itself, becoming itself through everything in the world. Every pond, every raindrop, every star is a prayer heard and answered lavishly. Life doesn't need us to be what it is. But the intriguing point is that this earth, life, invites us also, and similarly, to be who and what we truly are. All we have to do is dare. She relates this in an interesting way to prayer. If you're familiar, there's another poem where she declares that she doesn't know exactly what a prayer is, but I do know how to pay attention, she says, implying that this is all we have to do. Pay attention, be there, here, now. So perhaps this is what she's saying when she says, dare to be happy. Dare to participate in this unfolding mystery by simply being present and paying attention. Then, like every pond with its blazing lilies, we too will be a prayer, heard and answered lavishly every morning, every moment, like the ponds of lilies. You could add like every bird singing, every tree that sways in the wind, every cloud in the sky, every flower, every child playing, even us doing our best. Kind of encouraging, I think. But now for the other side of this interesting perspective, let's take a little look at Gorka's song. As I said, he's now in our age bracket, and so it's obviously a little tongue-in-cheek. I'll just, some of the words, people my age have started looking gross. People my age are showing somewhere, there's holes where their teeth was, their heads have gone bare, their brains are shrinking. Ugh. These are the challenges we have to address. This is the tension of Erickson's integration versus despair. The realities of physical entropy, gravity, decline, and breakdown, along with mental deterioration, as Billy Collins describes it, well on our way to oblivion, where you will join those who have forgotten how to swim and how to ride a bicycle. But this, along with an earth, life that knows exactly what it wants and invites us to be part of its magical mystery tour. So perhaps learning how to hold this tension is the heart of human living. I know humus in the medical world comes from a different root, but I always associate it with humus, grounded, and humility. Humor, holding it with humor. What do you think? There's the tension that humor is, we're asked to hold. We're asked to live humorously, humbly, humus-like, grounded. Maybe then we can hold these two things, this enormous life that knows exactly what it wants, and we who probably don't know exactly what we want, if at all. There's humor in that too. So we're going to break into groups again, into pairs again, and maybe ask yourself, what does this stir in you about eldering, about integration and despair, and the role of humor? We could maybe have another story that got you through a hard time. And how did it work? Maybe how do you cultivate it? How do you nurture it? Our children certainly can teach us a lot, as our grandkids in particular, as Jay was describing. So let's, Carlos, if you would, break us into pairs again and see what we come up with. So I'll see you along the way again. Enjoy yourselves. Tell good jokes. I have one for you when you come back.
That Kevin is funny.
There, Kevin is with you.
Oh, he is funny. He is funny. He gave me, I'm going to make a shirt that says I'm out of my head.
Talked about movement because I belong to this improv dance group that we've had for many years, and we keep doing it. And just that's what gets me out of my funk and my seriousness.
Yeah.
Is to go is movement. Danny, you asked if I remember the dialogue stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I still got it.
Still got it.
Still got it. I still refer to it. I still
my
do a lot
goodness.
of facilitating as a volunteer. Thanks to you. Blessings.
Well, Kevin is referring, I, for many years, worked with public health through the CDC and would go to county and state health departments and developed a program on, what do we call it? The art of dialogue. Really trying to explore how people could listen to each other more deeply and so on. And Sue, of course, I worked with down in Georgia for so many years. It's wonderful. But so it's great to see you again, Kevin.
Likewise, Dan.
Tell us a little bit about what you were just saying before everyone else came back on air. You go first as maybe an expression of the collective voice. What were you discussing in your group with Jessie?
Well, Jessie was talking about how she always gets out and walks, get out of her apartment in the city. And I was saying that for me, movement really is the way I get out of my head and get out of over worrying, because she was talking about just not worrying, trying just not to worry, not to think about things. And so was talking about this dance group that my wife and I belonged to for 40 years, and we're all now you know, 70s and up, and the guy who's the main leader is well into his 80s, although just incredible energy. I think he keeps it because he has refused to slow down. And he's had some real major health problems and mental health particularly, and his wife passing away for a long time. But he's kept his spirit going, and he's just this incredible person. And it's just movement and music is what kept him and us going for all these years.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did I say at the beginning that I was reading a New York Times article today by Daniel Barenboim, the conductor and pianist, and he was talking about Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. It's the 200th anniversary from the first performance. He talked about how music also holds the tension, the contradictions that we're talking about here, and humor. I think dance does the same thing. He
Yeah.
said something that really touched me. He says music laughs and cries at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Rob, you could resonate with that.
It's funny because at times I give myself a concert when I'm, like I'm in my head too much. I said, okay, I need a concert. So then I go to my bed and I put the Pandora. I have different stations, and I put shuffle, like that, just shuffle whatever comes. And I said, okay, I'm in a concert, and boy, do I have fun, because giving yourself a concert is the best.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. So there's movement, dance, improv, giving yourself a concert. Oh, what a great.
It's a gift.
It is a gift, of course. Yeah. What else? What else enables you to hold that tension? How does humor help that tension of integration versus despair?
Oh my God.
Danny, you just mentioned improv, and it occurs to me that if you live life in the moment, the whole life is improv. Everything is the spur of the moment.
As long as you don't plan, as long as you're not planning those moments.
You can't plan it. It has to emerge in the moment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have the time to read the funnies now too.
Ah,
Great cartoonists working.
That's for sure. What a gift. What a gift. I remember like the New Yorker, which is famous, of course, for
yeah.
films. And after 9/11, which was, of course, tragic. There was no New Yorker. It didn't do cartoons for a long time, understandably. And the first cartoon I can remember clearly is a man and a woman standing. A man's wearing an awful loud suit, and the woman looks at him and says, I never thought I would laugh again. And then I saw your suit.
Oh boy.
Well, I'll tell you one more joke to move us into our last stage of discovering. I promised the joke, and my friend Michael Reedy will appreciate this, because it's the joke about the Irish American coming back to the family farm in the south of Ireland. And of course, his family had left a couple of generations ago and had done well, made good in Texas. And he wants to impress the cousin who was left on the farm. And so he says to the cousin, "Cousin, can you tell me the size of your property?" And the cousin says, "What? Can you tell me the size of your territory? The extent of your territory?"
Oh my.
And the Irish cousin says, "If you go down to that tree and over to that ditch and up to that shed and back here, that's the size of my territory." And the American cousin says, back in the States where I come from, I can get into my car in the morning and drive all day and still not come out of my territory. And the Irish cousin says, you know, I used to have an old car like that myself once. There are classics, and I think it holds that tension and it sort of releases it. And you can see there's a little humor in it and letting go. And there's also a little wisdom in there somewhere.
Oh, I was just gonna say wisdom. A lot of wisdom.
Your accent is good too.
So let me offer a piece as we step into, again, just a reminder for those that are not as familiar, but connecting, exploring, and discovering. We just finished exploring, and it's always rich, the things that it stirs up. And then finally, we generate little bits of insight out of our interaction. And that's what the third stage is. It's kind of like listening for what has been generated, what's emerging out of us. It's like jazz a little bit. And so as a way of kind of catalyzing that, I'm going to offer a piece I encountered recently by an art historian called Roger Keyes. I think it pulls together a lot of what I feel I have come to in my own life about living in general and about eldering specifically. The poem is a description of a 19th century Japanese artist called Hokusai. And I might add that I believe that what he says is the fruit of humor, in the sense we've been using it of holding the tension between an earth that knows exactly what it wants and ourselves who mostly don't know exactly what we want. So I'll say it because it's a little bit long. And some of you I've shared it with already. Hokusai says, look carefully. He says, pay attention, notice. He says, keep looking, stay curious. He says, there is no end to seeing. He says, look forward to getting old. He says, keep changing. You just get more who you really are. He says, get stuck, accept it, repeat yourself as long as it is interesting. He says, keep doing what you love. He says, keep praying. He says, every one of us is a child. Every one of us is ancient. Every one of us has a body. He says, every one of us is frightened. He says, every one of us has to find a way to live with fear. He says, everything is alive. Shells, buildings, people, fish, mountains, trees, wood is alive. Water is alive. Everything has its own life. Everything lives inside us. He says, live with the world inside you. He says it doesn't matter if you draw or write books. It doesn't matter if you saw wood or catch fish. It doesn't matter if you sit at home and stare at the ants on your veranda or the shadows of the trees and grasses in your garden. It matters that you care. It matters that you feel. It matters that you notice. It matters that life lives through you. Contentment is life living through you. Joy is life living through you. Satisfaction and strength is life living through you. Peace is life living through you. He says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Look, feel. Let life take you by the hand. Let life live through you. So let's pause and breathe together and listen for what we hear emerging out of our interaction today. Just settle. And breathe. Be aware of your own body. Notice the noises around you, the sounds. And in this place, listen for the stirrings of our collective voice. What do you hear us saying about what we've called humor? So let's listen to that and feel, if you feel the urge to say something, realize it's the collective voice that's trying to find form through you. It's life living through you.
I don't have a big statement, but the word that comes to me when you're saying humor and the two groups that I was in, my word right now is soul. It's your soul. It's getting to your soul.
It's wonderful, Josie.
You know, I'll just tell you the punchline of the story that I told that came out of the conversation in my last group, and that is, learning is the best drug.
I'll say something. It seems to me where I go with the whole theme of humor is ultimately it's about, relaxing into oneself, just letting go of all the pretense and all the anxiety, all the neuroses about are we good enough? Have we done enough, et cetera, just letting go and accepting who we are, for exactly who we are. And that seems to be a very humorous thing to me. Somehow that's very light. It's a very light thing that makes me happy, which I think is the essence of what the humor is about. It's just letting go of all that, accepting who you are. It's the joy of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's partly humorous too, if we accept the fact that we're animals. We're human animals. I told my two grandnephews when they were about 7 or 8 years old, I said, we're animals. They said, we're animals? I said, yes, human animals. And I think that gives us great permission to accept ourselves. We are animals.
Any last thoughts before we try to bring it to a close?
I was touched by you saying that, Teresa, in one of the groups I was in, one of the pairs I was in, and it struck me that humor is healing, therefore, and it's wholesome, and therefore it's holy.
Beautiful, Michael.
Yeah, and on that, expanding on that, when we're laughing together, we're truly together.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Africa for many years, and it was said that when you heard laughter, something important was happening.
Mm-hmm. I like that it brings us together as a group, because I don't think most groups of mixed ages would be, talking about how funny it is to be old. It's kind of, it's our privilege really to do it.
Yeah.
And to care about each other. because of it.
Mhm.
I love that last piece, Rob.
Mm.
Something powerful about maybe being vulnerable together.
Mm.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Sue. I think you're muted, are you? There you go.
I think everything that we've been saying together is true. It's kind of to me like making music together in a way. It's because there is that sense. It's with humor as well as with singing in a group or just having a great time together. There's something that is so powerful, I think, at the soul level, as Josie was saying. There's something that really is, maybe it's the shared humanity of the moment
Oh, yeah.
that is part of it.
Yeah.
And then I was talking to in my group with of course now I'm looking for her picture and I don't see her, but anyway, we were sharing that at this point we're living in areas where some of it can be kind of comical, the importance that people attach to different things, but we don't feel responsible anymore for trying to fix anything. And just to enjoy the fact that we can enjoy our lives, and not feeling not feeling so guilty about the fact that there is so much despair in the world, and how you can live joyfully. I think it's back to what you said, Danny, about the whole thing with the integration of humor with despair, or joy with despair, and constantly working at that. But I think this has been a very rich session, and I love the thing about learning makes you happy, because
Yes.
that is definitely true. And it doesn't matter if you get old. You can keep, I mean, golly, I was listening to a very interesting thing on NPR today. This young woman who's written a new book about how plants communicate and have emotions and watch out for each other. And it's sort of like, get that book and read it. It just sounds fascinating to me. It's like, okay, this is okay. On the other hand, I'll just add this last piece, because not to be Pollyannish about it, but we all have some physical realities we have to cope with. And it does impact your daily schedule somewhat. You run out of energy more than you used to. And I think that's just one of those realities that's also back to that whole integration thing. So but thank you, everybody.
So helpful. So helpful.
It strikes me I really enjoyed this conversation today. And it reminds me of the wisdom of so many of our comedians.
Yeah.
Most insightful commentaries on what's happening in the world come from people like George Carlin, of course. I mean, he's actually a great theologian, I think.
Yes.
George Carlin he's always talking about God in ways that are very helpful. But Dave Chappelle is shocking, but he's right on. He makes us think, and he says it in ways that make me laugh as well. So listen.
The series Mrs. Maisel.
Oh yes, yes.
The series, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So true. I mean, in many ways they are, like, I think of Lenny Bruce. He was part of that series, a prophet in his own time. Pained man, in some ways, the one who holds the tension is often pained themselves, but they hold it in such a way. I mean, that's what constitutes humor. In George Carlin, you could feel the pathos beneath his humor, that it was personally painful in some ways for him.
Yeah.
But so humor is certainly not simply about belly laughing. It's something so much more subtle and
daring to tell the truth.
Yeah. So Hokusai says, keep looking, Stay curious at every stage of life. Just keep moving. It applies to every part of the journey, even perhaps especially to eldering. He says, look forward to getting old with all the wonders that this brings, as Sue highlighted, including the less attractive and desirable parts, as John Gorka's song and Billy Collins describe. Just keep changing, whatever form it takes, for it's all part of becoming yourself. You just get more who you really are. So go ahead, he says, get stuck. Accept it. Repeat yourself, as long as it's interesting. In other words, and I think this is what Michael was saying too, and take it all as it comes. The wrinkles, the losses, the creaking joints, the challenges of gravity, even the memory loss. I realize, of course, how painful this aspect can sometimes be, this loss of memory, and even apparent loss of identity for the person affected, but also for those who are caregivers as a result. I have a close friend, his wife has progressive aphasia, just supporting him in that painful process. But I'm wondering if it helps to keep remembering that this is life living itself in us. That's what helps me. And that this is the goal of Erickson's integration. The most important thing, Hokusai says, is to keep doing what you love. Keep doing what you love. For it doesn't matter how you feel or what you do. This is what really matters. It matters that you care. It matters that you feel. It matters that you notice. It matters that life lives through you. It sounds like being human, being humus, being humorous. Dare to be happy, Mary Oliver says. What she implies is what a prayer really is. Dare to be happy. Good God. Dare to be happy. I mean, I catch myself in misery sometimes. Dare to be happy. Simply being present, caring, feeling, noticing, life living through you. When you do this, then this dare, this prayer is heard and answered lavishly every morning. For contentment is life living through you. Joy is life living through you. What a simple and wonderful way to think about prayer, as simply being there, simply letting life live through you. It's another way of saying letting go.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I would sincerely love to live like this. I don't know about you. Simply be life as me. It's also, I would suggest, a way to understand humor. For, in a sense, the whole venture is, as we say, uno scherzo divino, a divine joke. In the sense of a perspective that enables us to hold together apparent contradictions in a way that allows relief, just as it generates deeper awareness. Anyway, it stirs all kinds of thoughts in me. I'm sure you're also stirred. Perhaps this aging stage with all its trials and tribulations is to be enjoyed as much as youth and energy and so on. So before I hand it over to Carlos, just to remind us of the continuing conversation, let me look forward to the next session when we will turn towards death and dying, but in an interesting and even, I think, fun way. In the middle of the coming month, I'm going to interview a woman called Barbara Serra, who introduced what's known as death cafes into our New York region. She's led about 120 of them. And she's amazingly funny. I've been to a number of them, and they're the funniest and most enjoyable conversations about death and dying. So you might want to Google it, Death Cafe, to get a sense of what I mean. But I'll post the interview when I do it in the middle of the month to give you a sense. And then I was thinking if we could experiment with doing a Death Cafe online as our next session. I don't know how it'll work out, but I'm going to sit in a death cafe online this month and see how we can make it fit into our mindfulness dialogue process. So lots ahead. Carlos, could you take us into the continuing conversation?
Yeah, I thought I'd start by sharing my screen and sending us to this. I don't know how many of you have visited our YouTube channel. I imagine possibly not many, but it's quite a thing. It's been growing since we started. Just wanted to show you what it looks like. And I invite you to take a look and notice that we have all the sessions there. We have them grouped by themes. And if you click into any of them,
So good evening.
you can revisit, but mostly it'd be interesting. I think it might be interesting for you to see that
comment.
underneath each of these conversations, we have our summaries of what we talked about. And then under comments, I've posted a summary of what people who were moved contributed to, sort of like after our conversation. I asked people to continue the conversation, and people send me their thoughts, and I have ChatGPT create kind of a new summary. So we're continuing to explore our collective voice. And you may not have visited the website, the YouTube channel, but I invite you to, because you might be surprised at what you can find. To get there, I have sent you all a message with a link to the website, to the YouTube channel. It's basically www.youtube.com/a new global we. And or you can just Google it and you'll get there. But I recommend you take a look and see what we've been doing together for the last few months. I think it's quite extraordinary. And if you could, please, most of us have the idea that our voice doesn't really matter. What we have to say doesn't really mean anything, doesn't contribute to the whole. I think I'll say that about myself. I oftentimes dismiss the wisdom that I have. And I think a lot of us do. But we're trying to change that. We're trying to change that paradigm. And we recognize in a mindfulness dialogue that we all have quite a bit of wisdom based on our own personal experience. And all we need is the invitation to share it, to surface it, to make it part of the whole. So we do that together once a month, and that's wonderful. But I want you, please, to take just 2 more minutes after we're done and just write down just some insight that comes to your mind. It doesn't have to be profound, whatever it is. One insight that you had from our coming together today about humor and the eldering process. Whatever comes to mind is the most salient thing you walk away with today. Put it down in a paragraph, just free write it, doesn't have to be fancy. And then send it to me. I've put in the link to the email address, contact@anewglobalwe.com. There's only 11 of us, 12 of us here. If we could hear from 12 of us, I'll have ChatGPT put it all together, and let's see what the collective wisdom has to say. It'd be wonderful exploration. I think it's part of our continuing conversation. That's what I hope we can do together, and let's see if this makes a difference for us over time.
Thank you.
Danny.
Oh, that's wonderful, Carlos. It's great to be with you all. Always a pleasure. Great to see old faces. Kevin, thanks for coming back to join us. Welcome every time. Remind those that probably out there, who knows, I don't know, technology has failed us over time, at least in terms of getting e-blasts and getting on. I don't know. The MailChimp has been playing jokes on us. That's part of the humor. But whoever needed to be here is who's here this evening. So welcome, thank you, blessings, and see you soon. Take care.
Great session, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Jesse.